Now it's time to discuss the structure of the vital organ of your body, that is the heart. Well, the heart is located between the lungs in the thoracic cavity. So, it is located between the lungs in the thoracic cavity, and let's see what is the size of the heart. The average adult heart is approximately 12 centimeters in size. You can just relate it approximately with the size of your fist, right. The size of your fist can actually be correlated with the size of the heart, right. The weight of the heart in males is approximately 280 to 340 grams, and in females the weight of the heart is comparatively less, that is 230 to 280 grams. So, as a whole, human heart is what? It is a hollow muscular organ which is, you can say, conical or pyramidal in shape. It is a hollow muscular organ which is conical or pyramidal in shape, right. So, let us see. We call the upper broad part of the heart, this upper broad part of the heart, we call it as the base of the heart, and the lower narrow part is the apex. You can see that apex is projecting towards the left side. So, we have two sides, we have the left part and the right part. So, you can see the apex, that is the lower narrow part, it is projecting towards what? Towards the left hand side, right. So, you can see a base which is broader and the apex which is narrower part of the heart, right. Well, the protective covering of the heart, that is known as pericardium. Well, means heart has the protective covering, that is named pericardium, which is actually composed of two layers. The layer is the outer parietal pericardium, and the inner one, that is the inner visceral pericardium. So, the pericardium is composed of two layers, that is the outer parietal pericardium, the outer one, and the inner one which we call as inner visceral pericardium. And between these two layers there is a space. We call that space as the pericardial cavity, and it is filled with pericardial fluid. So, as a whole, what you have learned, that the outer covering of the heart is composed of two layers. We have the outer parietal pericardium and the inner visceral pericardium. Pericardium is what? Pericardium is the protective covering of the heart. And the space between these two, it is what? The pericardial cavity, and this pericardial cavity is filled with what? It is filled with pericardial fluid. So, what is the function of this pericardium? This pericardium actually prevents the heart from shock, from mechanical injury, right, and it also helps in the movement of the heart. So, what are the three functions we have discussed? It actually protects the heart from shock, from mechanical injury, and also helps in the movement of the heart, right. Then let us discuss the external structure. Well, our heart is what? It is four chambered. So, we can say that we have a four chambered heart. This four chambered, out of these four we have two atria and two ventricles. When you are speaking about singular atria, you will not call it as atria, you will call it as atrium. If you are talking about one, you will call it as atrium. So, we have two atria and we have two ventricles. So, 2 plus 2 is 4. So, our heart is what? It is four chambered, because we have four chambers in the heart. Now, let us discuss just a briefer overview of the two atria, right. Well, the atria have thin walls. You can see we have a left atrium. Remember, singular, when we are just talking about one atria, you will not call it as atria, we will call it as atrium. So, we have left atrium and we have a right atrium. So, as you can see, left atrium and a right atrium. Now, these atria, they have what? They have thin walls. The walls are thin and the left atrium is smaller than the right atrium. Now, look at the image very carefully. You can make out that the left atrium, it is what? It is smaller than the right atrium. Right atrium is comparatively bigger in size. You can make out this is left atrium and the right atrium, the size difference, right. Then there are appendages that we call as auricles. Now, from the auricles, remember the word, that is ear. From auricles, just remember the word that is ear. So, they are termed as auricles. Why? Because they give an appearance of ear. So, there are appendages in the atria that we call as auricles. We will discuss these functions, we will discuss how the heart works. Just try to understand the external structure of the heart. So, we have 4 chambers, we have the 2 atria and we have 2 ventricles. So, total of 4 chambers. So, we have divided the heart into 2, that is the left part and the right part. So, consequently what do we have? We have the left atrium and we have the right atrium, and we have similarly left ventricle and right ventricle, as you can just make out from this image. And remember that the atria, they have thin walls and the left atrium is smaller as compared to the right atrium. Now what does it has? You know, it has superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, coronary sinus and pulmonary veins. So when we talk about the superior vena cava, just remember at this stage that superior vena cava actually brings the blood from the upper regions of your body. For example, your head. Right. So, it brings the blood from the upper regions of the body. Inferior vena cava, it brings the blood from the lower regions of the body. So, just remember from the word superior and inferior. So, superior vena cava brings blood from the upper regions of your body and inferior vena cava brings blood from the lower regions of the body. For example, legs, right. Then we have coronary sinus. Coronary sinus actually has blood mostly from the heart only, right. It has blood mostly from the heart only. Then we have the pulmonary veins. Now these pulmonary veins, they carry oxygenated blood. These carry what? These carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. So the blood that is now oxygenated in the lungs, it is going to be carried, it is going to enter through this pulmonary veins, right. So pulmonary vein carries what? It carries oxygenated blood. So remember, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, coronary sinus and pulmonary veins, they are the parts of, they are actually linked with the atria, right. So you can just make out, you can just see the pulmonary vein, right. So we have 2 pairs of pulmonary veins. How much pairs? We have what? We have 2 pairs of pulmonary veins, right. Moving on to the ventricles. These ventricles, you can see the left ventricle and the right ventricle. The ventricles have what? They have thick walls. The atria have thin walls, but the ventricles have what? They have thick walls, and the wall of right ventricle is thinner. So if you see the right ventricle, the wall of the right ventricle is quite thin as compared to the left ventricle, and the left ventricle is longer and narrower. So this left ventricle, it is actually what? It is longer and narrower. You can see, you can make out the difference also if you can make it. Well, the left ventricle is what? It is longer and narrower. Now the left side of the heart, it carries what? It carries oxygenated blood. What type of blood is present in the left part? We have oxygenated blood, means the blood that is rich in oxygen. And the right part of the heart, it carries what? It carries deoxygenated blood, means the blood that is deficient in oxygen, or you can say rich in carbon dioxide. So what is going to happen? From the lungs, we are going to get what? We are going to get the oxygenated blood that is purified, right? It is going to come to the heart, and heart is going to circulate that blood throughout all your body parts. But when we talk about the deoxygenated blood, this blood is going to come from all the body parts, enter into this portion, which part? That is the right part, and it is going to be sent to the lungs for purification, for their oxygenation, right, for the removal of carbon dioxide. So just till now, remember that the left part is linked with oxygenated blood, and the right part is linked with what? It is linked with deoxygenated blood. So the heart is what? A muscular organ which is conical or pyramidal in shape. The upper part is the base and the lower part is the apex. Apex is projecting towards what? Towards left side. What is the size of your heart? It is just approximately the size of your fist, right? Then the protective covering is known as pericardium. We have an outer pericardium and inner pericardium. we have outer parietal pericardium and inner visceral pericardium, and the space between these two layers is what? It is called the pericardial cavity, which is filled with what? It is filled with pericardial fluid. Now, what is the function of this pericardium? It actually prevents the heart from injury, mechanical injury, shock, and helps in the movement of the heart. Heart is 4-chambered, means we have 2 atria and 2 ventricles. Singular is the atrium. The atria have thin walls while the ventricles have thick walls. Here you can make out the difference also. Atria have thin walls and the ventricles have thick walls. The left atrium is smaller than the right atrium, and the wall of right ventricle is thinner. So, left ventricle is longer and narrower, and in the atrium we have discussed superior vena cava, which brings blood from what? From the upper parts, upper regions of the body. Inferior vena cava brings blood from the lower regions of your body, and coronary sinus has blood which is from the heart only, right? That is why what? Coronary sinus. Then we have 2 pairs of pulmonary veins which actually carry what? Oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. So, we will discuss their functions in detail. Just remember how the heart is a muscular organ, conical or pyramidal in shape, the 4 chambers of the heart, the atrium, left atrium, right atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle, and one important point to remember, that is that the left part, it has oxygenated blood, and the right has what? It has deoxygenated blood, means the blood that is deficient in oxygen, or you can say rich in carbon dioxide, right. So, let us move further and discuss the heart in detail.